can't complain because who's going to listen? He's listening to my email.
Thank you.
Ah, on the road.
Did you use larger print?
Well, congratulations.
You can use your phone and zoom in. That's what I've been doing on my super plan.
Right now.
The eyes were the only thing that I had, like,
You weren't
for me, everyone in my family, mom's side, dad's side, everyone I had glasses before they were 20.
If you want to go, you could be
And I'm now
my guest.
stretching it as long as I can on
Heads up, I have to leave promptly at 9. I'll announce that once we get rolling, because I got to get home with the car so that the Manson can get to work in time. I'm leaving at 9, wherever we are.
You gotta write your name and address.
Well, that'd be nice. Based on past
That's pretty much where I'm at.
Dues. Yeah, we're doing international and all that, but they do a lot of wonderful things. And they want to do definitely local, helping the community and all of that. So, a lot of business people and professionals are getting involved, and people like myself. Teachers, educators, veterinarians.
Teacher
Educators.
is a profession.
Educator sounds so much more. It's a profession. It's a profession. So much more than being a teacher. Educator. Yes. Yeah. Educator. Yeah. I never thought of myself in that way. The trouble with this shirt is you can't go out drinking in it. Yes. Or if you do, they buy you a lot. Let's see. Who's responsible for this tiny print?
You are. Aren't you on that committee?
I didn't generate this document.
I did read this.
Formatted.
I will say I read it. I did not print it off.
But you know, this is a.
Well, yeah, they could have. I'm just trying to sit down and try to do this here. It's interesting. The motion to reconsider.
Whatever is on, whatever you guys
We voted on the prevailing side. Well, but what about it on the losing side? Was there a challenge? If there's no...
They amended the procedures, so do we have to vote on that?
As I always do, I procrastinate.
Michael, she's in the process of getting that copied off.
I locked out of the portal because I couldn't remember the password.
Well, one of the things I want to bring up,
I went
bothered me for years, and I don't think it's changed.
Friday before we were leaving, do all this stuff. And I haven't heard anything. But I finally got in touch with like an admin named Catherine. I think she's been phenomenal. I've been back and forth with her all week. But I haven't heard from her.
The budget is approved by this. Okay, well, yeah, we have our party back on.
Just trying to get started.
Well, the budget committee members,
I just saw on the portal
and then they have a
the new
public hearing.
assessed values. The new assessed values for the property. Really? I didn't put this.
Usually you have to go to the
I will see something about in 2 years, and I will just listen.
I started the village like 3 years ago. It's 22 now.
Well, that's because they read it.
Yeah. Well, I
It
try to
was
get
all this year, right? But it
Sometimes you have to. Been like 9.5 million.
That's good.
Yeah.
Trying to get back into the swing of things.
2.5 million.
Trying to get back into the swing of things.
This is your subject, but it's send emails down and say, you guys made a mistake. I can't.
Well, we're still cutting wood. We don't have the wood pellets in yet. They're not.
The good news is your rate went
They're
down.
fixing to sell it yet.
People look at that and say, well, geez, last year it was.
We'll get there.
You know, a bucket dollars. Now it's, what's going on?
And actually, we've been getting super good feedback.
I realized by now, how fine it is just on the first floor, but they reprinted it in much more legible. Thinking on the second page. So like, yes, it seems to be. Each week, so I wonder if I will get a nonetheless, at least I can read this one. I gotta get my eyes checked. So,
Faith's not getting old.
it never gets under the guys.
They have to wear a mask for, you know, the quarantine period.
If they're vaccinated.
If they're vaccinated, they've had contact, not positive, but they've had contact with a family member or something like that. but
It's
they
not,
have to-
I got vaccinated here, so I must be fine.
No, it's, if you're in,
someone
if
trying
you're
to
in
physical
contact, yeah, if you're in direct contact,
Warm in the afternoon, cold at night.
and you've been vaccinated, but you're negative, it's basically the family member. Oh, it's optional, I do every day.
Pembroke is Manchester.
Yeah, so it's no mandatory mask, it's voluntary.
There's been occasions,
I'm thinking about doing one.
I think you should.
I'm thinking, well, some people have offered one. I have like just like about the same size, just Wharton sledgehammer. I might just bring that and leave the table.
And just leave it at the table.
Some of them,
That'll make
I made some of the virtual ones. Not them in person.
There, if there's one that's getting contact, you said the mask and stuff, because all the time they do it. But they see if you're wearing it, they're more comfortable.
You look great, Susan.
Oh, even better.
I'm sorry? Yes. So, are we good to go? Okay. Then I will bring the Northwood Budget Committee meeting of October 21st to order at 7:07 with a roll call, please.
Brian Winslow.
Robert Yanni?
Tom Chase?
Pam Sanderson?
Betty Smith?
Brad Hall. Eric Buckland.
Mike Jobin?
Tim Jandover.
Ted Wilkinson.
Jim Gazowski.
And Ginger Dole. I have been informed Steve Robinson and Paul Tudor are unable to attend tonight. They are excused. I've not heard anything from Dan. And the last I knew, Betsy Coburn was interested in attending via
She's in the
virtual.
waiting room.
She's in the waiting room. Can you, Susan, can you let Betsy in?
You have to vote for. I thought they voted to allow that.
We already voted to allow, we already voted to allow.
Wasn't
But
I'm not aware of that. Walter, are you aware of that?
I have one.
what's that?
I'm not sure.
I'm the invisible.
All right.
There was an email criteria for remote that you had to state a specific reason.
Correct.
You could not state a blanket, not able to attend. You have to give a reason for the vote, some specific.
Correct. And until we let her in, we don't know what her reason is, right?
Right.
So I think we need to let her in. Are you there, Betsy? We're working out snafus. There you are. Can you hear us, Betsy? Betsy, can you hear us? hear. We don't hear you either. We see you. I know nothing about that machine, so.
Maybe if you drop checked it, it would help.
Can you hear us, Betsy? You can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Get a thumbs up. Robert, where are you now? Mr. Robert's still there?
Yes.
No, still can't hear you.
Still there, or he retired?
Well, yes, he's at part-time.
Pass the torch to
We're working on this end, Betsy.
two most important people at school, somewhere down the line, nurse, and then the food service people. Then we get to people.
Here,
Yes, Mr. Wilkins.
during this downtown, I just wanted to announce that I must leave promptly at 9 p.m. tonight, regardless of where we are in the procedure.
Duly noted, and I'm hoping that we're going to be done by then.
And I hope so as well. I'm just saying. Thank you.
Planning board had a 20-minute meeting the other night.
Football.
20 minutes. Wow. That's a new record, isn't it?
It was great.
Thursday night football.
What, did nobody show up until
If
you...
it wasn't for Betty Smith, it would have been 10 minutes, but she asked a question and someone else got going along, and next thing we know, it's 20 minutes.
Betsy, evidently can't
Sorry,
hear
Betty.
Well, we did.
We'll chat later.
I bet. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried to revamp
I understand.
it is a channel.
Nor is your spouse. But so you're involved with this. Yeah, I'll look around. So you want somebody to...
When all this is over, if it ever is,
Oh, the
somebody
people.
should write a book of COVID comedy.
Yeah.
School is not looking at it.
Kids tell their grandchildren.
I was in Paris.
Some people are
I've been thinking about the whole time. I almost took a picture of this on
Crazy night. Crazy night. Crazy night. Got his fingers all over it. It's starting to look for who are people in this town.
We talked about it.
Start looking at the interests.
Yeah, there we go. And the
Stay home.
serious, the unexpected.
Apart.
Difficult.
People that don't wear one.
People go down and say,
Yeah.
just the,
I can,
it's like,
Quite
some people have flies.
Well, anytime you want to talk about it,
Brian Winslow is serving as a school board.
I certainly do understand it.
Wife and 3 kids.
I wish everybody had a good job.
Yeah, right? Certainly not the pay.
Just become a mess because we have so much in it.
Yeah, yeah. Alcohol becomes an house, just there's levels in the outdoor one.
And you're also on my list of people to talk to about that you know because of your involvement with the school and PTA
sonar that's been made. Havana syndrome.
Policy in town that it should only be 6%. You got that much time? Yeah, when there were business people on the board, prior, me, people like that have business background, that didn't happen.
The Achilles disease thing, that's why you can't dial that person in. He just froze.
Due to that, she's real big on this.
Yeah, she's very focused.
That's exactly right. It's a nice
He is the longest standing.
The last year, this year, if the kid's absent, it's like, watch the video. And you don't. I was like, wait a minute. Because I've been on this committee.
Our church, we have like 25%.
Basically spinning our wheels. Really? Wow.
Big spikes. Oh, there we go.
We can hear you. Can you hear us? Okay, we got it.
The videos,
Yeah, the video's frozen, but
A lot of sneaky things going on. This election will show.
okay, so it appears that we've got our technical difficulties straightened out.
That's eye-opening.
Betsy, you've asked to participate electronically, and as you know, we have to record a reason for the request in our minutes. So what is your reason for attending electronically?
Can you talk into the microphone, please?
It's,
Yeah, you're not near the mic.
oh. Is that any better? Okay. So you've requested to attend electronically, and as we all know, we have to state a reason in the minutes for anyone who's requesting to attend electronically.
Okay, Dr. Jordan, Ms. Heather Bronson, 2018.
Okay, I got part of that. I'm sorry, can you repeat it, Betsy? Yeah, the only thing that I got out of it was doctor's orders.
Medical condition.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding that? Okay, seeing none. So we have Betsy. Okay, so our next order of business is the minutes from July 29th, and I would need a motion, please.
So moved
Hey,
to
Eddie?
accept the minutes of July 29th.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Does anyone have any corrections or? Michael?
Madam Chairperson, I seem to be the invisible man on this. I'm not listed as present or absent. In my high school, math isn't too good, but I count 11 under present, and I believe I was 12 as the vote showed down.
No, you were definitely here. So we need to add Mr. Michael Moore.
Ginger? I'm
Yes,
also in
Eric.
that same category. I should be under the absent excused, but I am not there either.
Okay, hang on, because I've got... Inexcused, excused. Yep, you are correct. I'm glad I brought my little recording things So we need to add Eric as excused.
Can I have a minor correction?
Spelling of your name?
Yes.
I saw that, but I couldn't remember how to spell it, so I figured I'd wait until we got here.
Okay. There's an F after the O.
Okay, so G-U-Z,
O-F.
oh, F is in Frank,
Yep. The rest is fine.
O-S-K-I.
No O.
No O, just S-K-I.
Yeah, just the F. Just put the F.
Okay.
Your name tag is spelled correctly, you can show it there.
There you go.
Oh, that helps me tremendously. I'm a facial person. Thanks, guys. Any other corrections or additions or whatever? I did find a typo on page 2. Under the Northwood School updates, the last bullet, funding amounts which are overdrawn by more than should be $1,000, if I remember correctly, Brian.
Yeah.
As opposed, we just need to put the zero in. Comma's in the right place, but the zero needs to be there. Anything else that anyone noted? Okay, seeing none, we need to take a roll call vote to accept the minutes as amended. Betsy, are you there?
I'm here, I can't see you guys. I can hear you.
Okay. Are you going to vote to accept or not accept the minutes as amended, or?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Yes.
Brad?
Abstain.
Tim?
Yes.
Dan's not here. Michael Moore?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Brian?
Abstain?
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Abstain.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes, and in case you're wondering, the list that Linda made out so nicely for me is in alphabetical order. So that's why I'm going around the table. Yes, Pam? Yes?
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Uh-oh, I had you on mine. I will add you right now.
Linda
Put
made
it
a
alphabetically.
Oh, Linda.
That's all right, we got it, we got it. So, I'm sorry, what was your vote, Pam?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Good notice.
So, next order of business is the minutes from the subcommittee meeting of September 20th. Tom, would you care to make a motion?
Having attended the meeting, I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay. Betsy, would you care to second the minutes, the motion for the minutes from the subcommittee? Not hearing anything, I will second the motion. And, excuse me. One thing I think we do need to add in these is just the date at the top, Linda. Just as we have the date at the top of the regular minutes. Because I went going through my calendar because I couldn't remember the exact date, but then I saw it on the agenda. So, but I think we should add that in. So these are the minutes from our meeting for a couple of hours, I think, well, an hour and a half. We are going to be going over the recommended changes that the subcommittee compiled a little bit later in our meeting. But does anyone have any questions regarding the subcommittee draft minutes as they have been written? Any typos that you've discovered? I didn't, but... Okay. In the past, when we've done minutes, you can vote to accept minutes even if you weren't at a meeting. You are not required to. You can certainly abstain if you weren't at the meeting. But I think I've got to go through the full roll just the same. Okay? Betsy, are you still there? Okay. We had the motion and second to accept the subcommittee minutes. And we're going to do a roll call vote to accept them as written now. Your vote? All right, I'll come back. Tom?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Michael Moore?
Abstain?
Betty?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Abstain?
Jim?
Abstain?
Brian?
Abstain?
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Abstain?
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Betsy, do you have a vote? Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we've got our minutes done.
Can you count, please?
Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abstentions. So it's 9-0-5.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have the school.
Great, good evening.
Hello.
Typically, I share a bit of a update with everyone on this committee. If you would still like me to do that, I'd be happy to. It might answer some questions, save some questions for later. Thank you. So the first bit of financial news, the state adequacy changed from what was predicted at budgeting season in the event of a surplus totaling close or approximately $289,000. That's been, the school board took no action on that, so it will be returned to the town. I believe that will be on the next tax bill. I don't think it's carried over to the next year due to the timing that we had. We had a very tight turnaround window. However, I could be wrong on that. But the adequacy was raised and returned to the school board. Did not try to do anything with it. So the second bit of news is that our part-time business administrator, Glenn Waring, is no longer working for MRI. I took a full-time position somewhere else. And so that happened about 4 weeks ago. Is his last day with SAU 44. Since then, our superintendent has interviewed between 8 and 10 candidates and has not been able to land a new business administrator. So we've tried to go through MRI as well as other temporary placing agencies. It's just an incredibly tight market right now. We had an offer to an individual on Monday. Everything looked good, and then that individual's employer counter-offered, and the person withdrew. So it's kind of what we're up against. There's he's in a situation of not just trying to fill a position, but trying to recruit heavily to fill a position in a tight market. So fingers crossed, but it's been a very challenging month for the business office due to being understaffed. Mr. Waring has been continuing to work after hours per diem, about between 5 and 10 hours a week. We've asked him to focus on the end-of-year filings, such as the DOE 25, because those are the very heavy ones that have to be done quickly. That one was filed this week, so that's set. And as a result of the short staffing, the expenditure report probably looks kind of confusing to a lot of people, a lot of questions. It's not been reconciled. So that your questions and my questions I'm happy to take them, but just know that we understand that it's not where it needs to be, and it's due to a staffing shortage. The school board has given some general feedback on preparing the budget. We are aware of the basically December 1st timeline to have that approved for the budget committee, and we're on track to do that. We'll really dig in November as we typically do. Coming up this year is a contract with the NESPA Association, so that's in process. And then also the linchpin for budgeting is the SAU Structuring Committee and the recommendations that they'll share and what the school board will do with those. And those will be coming to the school board at our next meeting on December 27th. So welcome you all there to hear them, and we'll love your input. And then prior to the December workshops, the school board would like to offer the budget committee a tour of the facilities, both the Northwood Elementary School as well as the SAU building, which might help in understanding where some of the recommendations are coming from or some of the budgeting decisions that are being made.
Did the school board, were they thinking of a specific date for everyone, or just as individuals and our time permits, or?
We'd like to do I think a specific date for budget committee members to come. I mean, if someone couldn't make it at that time, we could do more than one date, but ideally, just because everybody's busy, it might work best for everybody. So that, if the budget committee would be interested, I can have the superintendent work with the budget committee administrator and set up a time, and we'd love to have you all see what we're working with. So.
Personally, I think that's a good idea for all of us to be able to actually see what space there is, what there isn't, how it's being used, that kind of thing. What? Yes, ma'am. Oh. Do I need to repeat that? I think it would be a good idea for us, for those of us, if it's possible, to go and check out the two buildings to see what kind of space the school board is looking at, how things are being utilized now, that kind of thing. I personally do much better seeing something than just trying to imagine it. What say any of you? Sound good, not good? Tim?
So what are the two buildings?
There's a Northwood Elementary School,
Yep.
and then there's the SAU building that's on Route 43.
And so you're suggesting that we come down and look at those?
If you'd like to, we'd like to offer you a tour of the two buildings, yes.
I'm sure there's people who haven't seen them. I've seen both schools ad nauseum. So
Well, I'm thinking...
if you haven't, then maybe you would like to. But.
One of the things that I know, because I have friends in Stratford and Nottingham, who indicated that when they were setting up their own SAU, they were looking at available space in their schools, and was there space, wasn't there space. I'm guessing, because I haven't followed along the SAU restructuring meetings, that may be one of the questions that they're looking to resolve. And for me, I think it would be very beneficial to know if there is, to see space at the elementary school, if there's space available, if there isn't space available. I think it would be of benefit to those of us who choose to go along. Tim?
So, and I agree, especially if you haven't seen the school, and if you look at it all. I would have questions like preschool downstairs, how many kids are in it now? Is Stratford still in it? I'm assuming not, but I don't know the answer to that. Is Nottingham going to stay in it? And if not, so there's, I hope that if people do go, you get a chance to look at the entire school. So that's one area that you really should ask to look at. That would make a great SAU place. And I would just remind everybody that we were sold a bill of goods that that school would hold 600 people. There's, I think, 341 students in there now. So obviously, there's a lot of room in that school somewhere. But that's just from my standpoint. But I do think, honestly, if you haven't seen that school, that it would be a very, very good idea that you go take a look. I do think that's a great idea.
Any other comments or questions? Pam?
I think it would be an excellent idea to see the current situation. There are often times that space becomes seemingly available, but is utilized for other measures that have been waiting for space, such as special ed programs that need to have a quiet room or a room that is used as a learning center or a resource center for others. So sometimes the appearance on paper is not necessarily reflected in current use. So I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity to go there and see currently what is happening, and assuming, as you suggested, if we were to see empty rooms, we could say, oh yeah, we could move this, but I don't think we're going to see that.
No, you're not.
I don't think we're going to see that, so I would welcome the opportunity.
Okay. It looks like there are at least a few of us anyway that would be interested in a tour, so if you and can figure out a date, time, whatever, and
I'll have Mr. Byrne work with Ms. Smith on
sounds good.
coordinating a time that could work for everybody.
Okay, great.
And then, as I said, the expenditure report is not reconciled, and I have a lot of questions on it. If you have anything specific you'd like me to bring back to the superintendent, to the finance office, I can do my best. But there's, a number of things that are clearly not up to date for this report at this time, so.
Tom?
When did you say the school board's next meeting to hear from the SAU subcommittee?
Next Wednesday, it'll be on the 27th, and the subcommittee will present their findings pretty much at the top of the meeting. So.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions on, we usually go page by page, but, with the understanding that Brian has already explained that things are not reconciled yet. That does, for me anyway, Brian, explain, because I was going to ask why some columns or some line items appeared to be completely encumbered for the year and other lines weren't, and I was
and
trying to
some
figure that
even
out.
particularly salaries appear to be over encumbered. So,
Right.
We've got a lot of questions, and it's just with the limited staff number, the focus has been to get the end of year filings in. So, in terms of building a budget, with our current superintendent, when he was the student services director, he took over building a budget a few years ago when we had a finance, a business administrator out on medical leave. In the same system iVisions that we had then, I have confidence that he can help us build through a budget. It would be a lot easier on him if he had a BA.
Right.
He'll probably age 10 years in the next month, but I'm not worried about that. I do obviously want to get our finances clean so we can predict before the end of the year where things are going, and I'm sure that they will. It's just it's a frustrating situation that we're in right now. So.
Well, and in a way, it's fortunate, this being your first quarter of your fiscal year, that's giving you a little bit more time to get all the ducks in a row and that kind of thing.
Can I?
Yes, Tom?
As I went through this and looked at the places where taking into account what's actually spent and what's encumbered, there are many, many instances where there's a big discrepancy between, or it's a big minus number. And do you know, and I'll take the one that's first, is teacher salaries. And it looks like it's going to be $135,000, $136,000 behind. And similarly, back on page 4, the curriculum director is,
Yeah, both of those encumbrances are wrong. I don't
So
know
it's just-
why that number is there. It hasn't been reconciled, so
So
I can tell you flat out,
it's
that's
not
not
the
the actual
the
number.
budget over here, the old budget had the salary at this level, but in fact, the actual salary has been increased, and that's why that's happening.
Right, what I think you'll see in the GL budget column, that's the budget that was approved. Those are the numbers that are there, so if you see an overage of, 15% or something, that's because things haven't been reconciled at this point. And I don't know why the process went through to doing like a large encumbrance in that way. I don't understand that, but it's definitely something that I'm sure is not correct and will be corrected, hopefully, as soon as we can, but we're working understaffed, so they're working understaffed, and they're working hard, but they're working understaffed, so.
Tim?
I hate to get off track, but it would be possible if I could turn my heat down a little. I'm cooking. I don't know about the rest of you.
Yes.
Okay.
That was just the hot seat.
Which is what we refer to it as over the years, the hot seat. And since I don't know how to do it anymore because they've got all new stuff, I don't touch it anymore. Thank
Well,
you,
he's got
Walter.
3 or 4 remotes, so he can get it done.
So that being said, it might be wise to certainly look through it, but since it hasn't been reconciled yet, to make a list of individual lines, because the whole thing is going to be gone through again anyway. It seems as though we could probably move on from the monthly expenditure report. Is there anything, Brian, that the school board is aware of now that could present budgeting problems for fiscal year 21-22?
No, I know there were some alarms, but they've been taken care of. In our last, like the New Hampshire retirement system, I know that payment went through this week. That was one we were watching. There's a deadline on it. So there's nothing that I know of that is becoming a problem. There's been a few times where it's kind of been all hands on deck to get things done.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions that they would like Brian to try and answer or bring back answers to? Tom, and then Bob.
Looking at the enrollment report, I see that we have 40 new kindergartners.
Yep, that's the number I saw too.
Yeah, that looks like after a drop off to 29 and 34, it's nice to see more kids coming in. Can you tell me the difference between the subtotal under grade K through 8, over on the right-hand side says subtotal 344, and then September 21, it says 348. Does that mean that there have been 4 more kids showing up between the time that the subtotal, I didn't do the total.
The way that I read it is that we have a net loss of 4 students from September 21 to October of 21.
Ding.
Well, 348 is higher. In that,
Oh,
that
I'm sorry.
column.
Yes, this is as of October. Yes.
That's the way I read those numbers.
Oh, so the grades K through 8 subtotal of 344 is the October number, and the other one is the other number.
Yep, that's how I read it.
Okay.
Bob?
Yeah, just a sort of a procedural question. We really didn't complete the fourth quarter budget the last time because, if you go back to the notes, it said that the committee requests the next meeting also include the fourth and first quarter reports.
I did notice that, and I believe they were requested, basically the end of year, the final end of year, now that all of the tallies were up, because we met in near the end of July, your fiscal year ended June 30th, there was still some bills coming in, I believe. There usually are. And while we have an approximation, we didn't have a final figure.
I will speak to the superintendent and ask if he can mail that out. I don't know what the request was. I got the packet with everybody else, so.
Okay, and if there are any questions, then the superintendent could certainly get a hold of Linda, or if Linda's unavailable, they can give me a call. But go to Linda first.
Okay. Will do.
Are there any other questions or items that anyone would like to review for the school at this point? We'll wait for the revised. Yep. Wait for the revised figures. Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
So we move on to the town. This is our third quarter. Do you have an overview you'd like to give us, Mr. Podolsky, or should we just go page by page and see if anyone has questions?
Questions would be good.
Questions would be good.
Kind of self-explanatory here, but if there's specifics you would like
Okay.
to know.
So as we have done in the past, and it seems to be the most productive way of going about it, does anyone have questions on page 1 of the town's third quarter expenditure report? Okay, seeing none. How about page 2? Okay, still not seeing anybody. How about page 3? I do have one question regarding under assessing administration, the contracted services. Is the $41,700 all we needed to pay for this year? Or is there still an outstanding invoice? I know that the amount that was approved was the default amount, which in some cases is enough, in some cases it isn't.
There are monthly invoices to the assessor, so there would be 3 more payments coming out of that line before the end of the year.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else have questions on page 3? Okay, moving on, page 4. Again, I have a question under Personnel Administration. The second line, Personnel Administration Maintenance. It appears that we have a $28,000 encumbrance. Is my memory correct in remembering that that was the fee that the selectmen agreed to a year or two ago to do something different with the electricity, which was going to lower our annual rate, or am I thinking of something else?
You have an excellent memory, Madam Chair. Yes, that was funding that was encumbered for a lighting upgrade to all the municipal buildings, and I'm very pleased to say finally, after 2.5 years, that we received the report just this past week, and we'll be going forward with implementing that program as soon as the contractor can get started. And
What's in-
eventually,
What's involved with, what type of work are they going to be doing? Are they changing out all electrical fixtures? or-
fixtures, yes, yeah, it has to do with lighting. It's a lighting program,
So all of these lights, for instance, would be changed out?
yeah, potentially. I don't have the list of everything that's
Okay.
going to be done, but yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And some of them have an excellent payback schedule, as soon as perhaps a year and a half in some cases. So it's basically a 50-50 match between Eversource and the town for the cost of the fixtures.
Okay, great. Anyone else have questions on page 4? Okay, moving on to page 5. Okay, I'll speak up again since nobody else has anything at the moment. Under Town Hall buildings, about 2/3 of the way down, the last line for grounds care town-wide. The explanation is that the mowing contract for 2021 was not included in the default budget, but we've had mowing every year. My memory is not that good. In this case, I don't remember where in the budget the mowing came from in the past. Does anyone have any? I'm guessing that this is perhaps a new line or something. We've mowed every year. The people who mowed the cemeteries, who mowed the town hall and all of the other town grounds got paid. I just can't remember what line it came from. I don't know. I thought maybe,
Some of
Ted.
that, I believe, came from the trust fund, trustees of the trust fund.
for the cemeteries,
The cemeteries, yes.
but not for like the library, the town hall, the ball fields.
Right, cemeteries only.
Right.
DPW was doing it for a while.
I'm sorry, who was?
The Public Works, the town road agent was doing it for a while internally. Is it possible that because we've had a default budget for 2 years, it was picked up in the town road agents?
That's possible.
Again, that's what, you try to adjust the lines with your yearly budget.
Right.
And to make them correct. And then if a budget does not go through, then you end up set back to where you were, say, with postage, where it's all going to go on one line, but because we're still in that default, it's still spread out.
Right.
throughout the budget.
Right.
So getting your lines cleaned up would be very, very important, once again.
Okay.
I think, yeah, it's probably down, not entirely.
Well, it was something I was curious about because of the explanation, and I was hoping that you guys had better memories than me.
Way down on page 8, you've got, under highway administration, you've got grounds maintenance and roadside building, mowing students, grounds maintenance and roadside mowing. And that line is way down, it looks like, amount remaining 14,828. So that might be where the line adjustment is occurring. And we're gonna keep bumping into these things.
Yeah, and I did have that highlighted as well as one of my questions.
So you
So,
got a 14,828.
yeah, that could have been where it came from. Makes sense.
And that would make more sense.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions on page 5? Tom?
There's work going on, Walter, down at the community hall to replace the front steps and ramp, and I'm not sure what else. Is that anticipated in the budgeted amount?
No, that's coming out of the expendable trust for facilities.
Okay.
That's not in the operating budget.
Yeah. It's covered.
Other questions on page 5? Okay, moving on to page 6. No one has anything on 6? I do have one quick question at the bottom of page 6 regarding the police vehicle purchase. Could you give us an update as far as what the status is of the police cruiser? That I know they had to wait.
They're still waiting. I
They're
believe.
still waiting on it. I would assume that that amount would end up being encumbered then if you don't have it by the end of the year. Page 7. I have several questions here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer them or not, but, and I think, Bob, you can probably help me with the community management services. Is that the compact that we belong to?
Every time that question comes up, that seems to be the
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of, so.
dispatch service.
Okay, I just wanted to be certain of that. Internet access. I'm trying to figure out where that might have been previously in the budget, because I believe that the fire department has had internet access for years. So I'm not certain where.
Ginger, that was under the telephone line in the past. It was grouped together in telephone.
The internet and
Telephone.
telephone were in
together.
one. Okay, thank you. That explains that. The encumbrance on the electricity line, it appears as though that may be a 1-month invoice. I'm just concerned as to why other departments have not gone over on on their electrical line, that it doesn't strike me as being a rate increase that could be bringing them over considerably by the end of the year, if that 611 is a 1-month charge, because there's still 3 months to go.
I don't off the top of my head know what that 611 is made up of, but I will look at it and I will send it out tomorrow. Let
That
you
would
guys
be
know.
terrific if you could, Cheryl. Because if it is a 1-month thing, then you're going to turn the lights off more often. The tools and hoses, does the board have any information as to when tools, the hoses, et cetera, the things that are typically purchased under that line will be purchased? I know that there was a fairly good amount that had initially been listed in the CIP plan. And I'm just confused about, you got money, but you haven't purchased it. Is it because you don't need it, or because you just haven't got around to it yet? Perhaps somebody could
I think it was
check that
more
out.
they didn't need it. They're really trying to, my understanding is, cut back and only get the absolute need. As the chief mentioned the other day, that when the hoses were pressure tested, they only lost a few links, and they're able to save some money there.
Okay.
So this coming year, though, he feels there'll probably be a little bit more failure, and plus he's put some of that in the CIP, I believe, also to help cover with that. So that's why that's probably still remaining balanced.
Yeah, I'm just figuring with close to 10 grand, buy them now if you know you're going to need them in a few months, that's all.
Okay.
My thought. Yes.
I think one of the things we've noticed with this department, as we have with administration, is that the salary lines are going to be significantly over because they were budgeted for
Way back when,
way back when.
right?
Right.
So I guess I would applaud them for purchasing it now with the idea of reinstating that salary line.
Good point. Very good point. Walter? I don't
Yeah,
have the item
that's,
in the back of my
yeah,
head.
Bob is correct, and also the fact that, as we head towards the end of the year, obviously, we've got some departments that we're concerned about going over budget. So we've asked people to, as Jim stated, to just buy what's necessary at this point in time as we head towards December, then we can revisit some of these things that we've postponed or delayed, and hopefully make those purchases at the end of the year so they don't carry into 2022.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone else have questions on page 7? Come on, I can't be the only inquiring mind here tonight, guys. Page 8. So, under Highway Administration, the line that Pam mentioned to us earlier, the grounds maintenance and roadside mowing, has there been any roadside mowing yet this year, or is there any planned? Do we know? Well, I live on a state road, so I don't travel the roads very
I think all
often.
our mowing is done, isn't it?
Yes, we've done 50% of the town this year, and we'll do 50% of the town next year, the remaining 50%. So that's kind of the pattern that we're adopting now. But yes, it was done in the month of September, latter part of September.
Pam?
Quick question, on the spraying, the roadside spraying, is that under invasive species, or is that under the mowing and roadside maintenance?
If I may, majority of the cost is coming out of the expendable trust for the invasive species. We didn't have quite enough money because it was the first year for the trust to cover the whole bills. Just a portion of it's going to be coming out of the operating budget.
We can anticipate, on the operating budget, where would it appear here, or?
It will, yeah. We just got the bill, so it hasn't been
So we could
posted.
anticipate seeing that roadside maintenance overage.
It was only,
Right in between the two lines with the 14,000.
yeah, it was only $1,000 that's coming out of the operating budget.
Okay, all right, so just walk that in mind, that when we see $1,000 overage, it is that spraying.
Other questions on page 8? Seeing none, move on to page 9.
I have a question.
Yes, Michael?
Under snow and ice control, we seem to have a bunch of money for sand, but we're also already $7,000 overspent on salt.
And we have plenty of sand down there, and there is no salt in the salt bin, because I checked today.
It's expensive, and, we had some of that is attributed to the end of 2020. So because of when the bills came in and so forth, some of them came in later on in the year versus in January. So a portion of that is attributed to the 2020 cost.
Are there plans to replenish the stock soon?
Yes, we're doing, same thing with the hose. We're watching our pennies, and, we can, as soon as we know we've got daylight left at the end of the year, then we're going to obviously fill the salt bin to the degree that it can be, because the sanders that are hanging in there take up some space.
Okay, because I had an additional question, but go ahead, Pam?
Quick question on
Yeah,
salt.
yeah.
Are we seeing price increases on such a thing as salt at this point?
From what we've heard so far, contract-wise, they're going to be about the same, or perhaps even slightly less. Our biggest concern is availability.
So we have a contract already, so we're locked in on, so we're in good shape as far as an increase?
Again, yes.
Yes.
We typically follow the state bid.
Okay.
So sort of along that line, as far as price increases for the entire town, and I just happen to be looking at the top of page 9 for the heat oil for the recycling building and what have you, because obviously oil prices are going up sometimes twice a day, let alone daily. One thing that I have always asked about this time of year is if all of the tanks have been checked and filled. It would seem to me to be especially important this year because of the price continuing to go up daily, to get them filled as quickly as possible, because cold weather is coming and we know we're going to need heat between now and December 31st. Tim?
We don't have a recycling bin.
We do, it's just not being utilized as such.
We don't have a recycling building. Nice try.
There's history on that. We won't go into it tonight, though. Pam?
I recall conversation for the board back in May about filling up oil at that point. Do you know, did we buy in and fill up at that point? And maybe that's why we're not seeing the expenditure yet?
So everything we have is on automatic bill.
Okay.
So, as soon as it gets down to a certain level, it automatically gets filled.
And like the salt, is this a contract or?
As I say, we've followed the state bid contract. So, yes, it is in a contract through the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Other questions on page 9? Moving on to 10. Then under the health department, do we have a health officer at this point?
Yes.
We do, okay.
Yep.
So we will, come our next financials, our expenditure report, we'll see some wages coming out
I
there.
imagine, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Other questions on page 10? About page 11? Kim?
Do we have a welfare director?
I had the same question. Do we have a welfare director?
That, I'm not sure. Do we?
No, we don't have one that's just a designated welfare director. Since David Lane left almost a year ago now, that's been handled by myself and with the assistance of the finance director. So again, unless there's a significant change, in the demand for human services, which has been, fairly minimal through the course of this year, as you can see, then we would probably not fill that position at this time.
Have there been requests for assistance, but you've been able to direct them to other, perhaps state programs rather than town programs?
Well, you might be aware the county has received a significant chunk of money, from the CARES Act as well as from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan. So a lot of the housing needs and so forth is being handled through the county. They're going to obviously continue their fuel assistance. Actually had my first inquiry today, as a matter of fact, probably since first one since last June. So, no, to answer your questions in a roundabout way, there hasn't been any significant demand at all.
Thank you.
Fortunately.
Brad?
Just quickly jump back to page 10, the animal control. Just curious, 10,000 budgeted, we only done 2,200 year to date. Do we have an animal control officer?
When the chief was asked that the other night, he said yes, but that's all he said.
Just
That
wondering
I
why
recall.
you would think the salary would be
I think he
Three
meant
quarters
yes,
done rather
but they
than
might not be
25% done.
functioning. I don't know. He didn't get into great detail.
Maybe we haven't had any dogs or anything, or animals that
Well, I don't know how the
they
salary works.
needed to go out. If in years past, it was per incident, how long does it take to that's whatever, as opposed to a set amount each pay period. But that may have changed too. I don't know. That was a number of years ago. Tim?
Does anybody know who our dog officer is? Our animal control officer is?
Evidently not.
Has it changed?
I
No.
believe there has been a change, yes.
So it's not Goodrow anymore?
I believe that, as I recall from minutes of selectmen's meetings, he had resigned.
To the best of my knowledge, he hasn't resigned. He has been on administrative leave for some time, and I don't believe there has been a change. As Jim had mentioned, we asked the chief the other night, he said, yes, we still have one, but he didn't elaborate.
Okay. Thank you. Are you all set with that, Brad? Okay. Are there any other questions on either pages 10 or 11? Moving on to page 12. Okay, since nobody else is jumping in, I have a question regarding sanitation line. The near the top of the page, 2461 was appropriated in the recreation department. I'm assuming that porta potties. I thought I saw at least one unit down at Mary Waldron. I haven't been over by Northwood Lake, but I believe they've always had one there as well.
There is one there.
Do they not get emptied, or do they not get... I just don't understand why all year long, through the summer, it was hot, lots of people going to the beach, I would assume that they would be used.
As of 9:30, we had not been billed yet for those porta potties that were used throughout the summer.
Wow. That might be a fun one to follow up on before we get 10 grand in charges for emptying porta potties for the season. We would be in it deep, yeah. Any other questions on page 12? Okay, seeing none, page 13. Bob?
I guess my question would be just on the bottom line. And it says here we have about 30% worth of appropriations not spent yet. How close are we to that? And do we know if we're going to be okay for the remainder of the year?
Good question.
I think we're speculating on how bad it gets for weather before the end of the year. I think we're going to be okay, and the lovely lady behind me will correct me if I'm wrong. The only concern will be if we get a bad storm before then, that could kind of mess it up. So we're going to be close. And as you heard, we're having our departments just do whatever is necessary so we can not go over by the end of the year. So everyone's been tightening their belt really well. And no major catastrophes. And, so, would that be correct, Cheryl?
Yes, Jim, that would be correct.
Thank you.
We had a projection as of 9:30 of, I believe it was 188,000 remaining that hasn't already been allocated or encumbered through the end of the year. So that would have to cover any snow incidences or anything else that we can't plan on, equipment problems, that type of thing.
So we're close to $1 million of this bottom amount is already accounted for. 990-something thousand.
So we went through and estimated what we know are our fixed accounts, which are typically our salaries and benefits and so on and so forth. And then we also went through and looked at last year's expenditures for things like facilities, utilities, et cetera, heating costs, plugged those numbers into an encumbrance budget that Cheryl's been maintaining. And then there's some things that we anticipate we would be able to do before the end of the year that we've also encumbered within that working encumbrance budget as well. So, and as Cheryl mentioned, not anticipating or not being able to plan for unexpected failures in equipment, repairs, excessive winter storms, in November and December, we believe at this point in time that we're going to come in with perhaps just a slight amount of money left over, if that. But it's close. There's not a lot of wiggle room. And, yeah.
I know I would have found it helpful to see those lines extrapolated out as encumbrances to give us a closer idea as to where you anticipate some savings to be.
Ginger, if I
And
may...
basically, they would be by the time we get the next one.
If I may, we sat down and had a meeting. Tom was there, you were there, Linda and I, and I had a copy of that report, and you said that you didn't want to have that distributed to the Budget Committee. So that's why I didn't forward it to you.
You were going to be putting it on the website.
It is on the website.
I stand corrected. Folks, check it out on the website. And then that way we can find out where they're anticipating the savings would be. Are there other questions regarding the expenditure report? Betty?
Not really a question, just a comment. They might want to keep an eye on the last weekend in October as far as snow events, etc. Because 10 years ago, we had quite an event on that weekend.
I have gone trick-or-treating with my children on several occasions over the years, tiptoeing through snowbanks. Yeah.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, I was shoveling the driveway because Mike had surgery on his knee. So,
let us pray.
And the trees are looking about the same as they did that year.
We also got a revenue report for the third quarter. Did anybody happen to take a gander through that? I had just a couple of things that I highlighted. The first being UCC fees. The prior year, we had received $840, but we estimated we would receive $8,000, and I'm not exactly sure where that revenue, what's UCC fees?
What line are you on?
UCC? Yeah, UCC. It is the 100-32901-039. It just seemed like that was a fairly large discrepancy between what we had last year, what was estimated for this year. And I don't really know what constitutes UCC fees.
Well, first of all, that's the Uniform Commercial Code. And so when there's a lien put on commercial property, it gets registered in the town clerk's office, and and there's a fee for that. I can't tell you why $8,000 was estimated, other than the fact that it may have been $800, but I'd have to double check that to find out. But 8,000 would be a outrageous number for that particular line item. So that's something that we would have to check into, unless Cheryl might have another.
Well, I don't really have an explanation except to say that I don't know where these estimated revenue numbers came from because they were created before I got here.
Right, right.
But I can go back and look. I mean, the numbers are what was estimated on the MS form.
Okay.
Where that came from, I couldn't say.
And I will say that we have amended that number in our revised revenue forms that was filed with the Department of Revenue, I believe.
Okay. Thank you. Miss Pam?
If I jump down?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
I'm looking at miscellaneous revenue. Just kind of wondering what's happening in there. What is miscellaneous revenue? What are we jumping into that category?
It is basically anything that doesn't fit in any of the other categories. Refunds from overpayments, I would have to run a detail on it, but I can give you a detailed report tomorrow.
So it's a lot of little.
It's a lot of little things that adds up to that, yes.
Things.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll buy that, and I'm assuming the revenue of the sale leasedown on property doesn't include the October numbers.
That is correct.
Do we have the October numbers?
Not final numbers for October, no, not yet.
I know there were a lot of cars there when I drove by. Place was packed. Either that or there was some recreation thing going on down below. But.
We'll be hearing more about that in the town's portion and all in the future.
Okay. And one other one that I just wanted to double check on because I wasn't sure if it was a typo. I know that there's been a lot of building. That's the site plan fees. Has there been enough stuff coming that involves site plans that we would have gone from roughly 1,500 to 15,000?
Yes.
Well, that's based on the fact that there is for major developments a disturbed area fee, and if you get a particular application where they're going to be disturbing a large area, which we had in one particular application, it added up to a very large amount of money.
Okay. I know that there's been some construction and whatever. I just basically wanted to be sure it wasn't a typo. Yeah. Okay, great. That's all I have. Does anyone else have any questions on the revenue report? I'm being Jim Valancourt. He always does the revenue report. Okay, then I think we are all set with the town. Excuse me. Talking too much. I think you've given us a fairly good idea as to any potential financial issues. You know, we're keeping our fingers crossed that Mother Nature works with us and not against us and that kind of thing. So we'll go on to our internal business, which is the form that I passed out to you just before the meeting with the recommended changes to our Budget Committee procedures.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Any reason why you would like us to stay any longer?
I don't think so. I don't see anything on here. The only thing, and you would hear about that in the next few days, is just what we decide that we would like to have for information for our December meeting, but we can pass that along to you, so.
Great. Okay.
Go on in, go and enjoy the rest of your
Thank you. We
evening.
won't take up more oxygen.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Carol.
Yes, thank you very much, both of you. Okay, so I don't have a copy that got passed out because I printed mine off and mine changes are in red. So, we do need to discuss them, determine whether or not they're acceptable or what have you. So, number one, a couple of the changes that we recommended were that everybody receive their packets via U.S. mail, which means nobody picks them up anywhere. Nobody will be delivering them to anyone. And that they're to be received at least 1 week prior to the meeting. Another suggestion was that the budget committee would only review information or take action on any information received prior to the date of the meeting. It would be a vote. So in other words, if we don't have it at least 7 days in advance, sometimes we're given last minute material. Do we want to act on it? If so, we would need 2/3 vote to act on that information as opposed to putting it off to the next meeting. Now, we've had situations like that in the past, which was one of the concerns that had been raised in the past. So we did agree that that would be something that we felt that the full committee should weigh in on.
Just a question.
Certainly.
Well, I've got 2 pages here. Is what's on the second page the same thing? It appears to be pretty close to what's on the first page, but it's way more readable.
One is shows the track changes of when changes occur. The other one removes the old and is simply a revise with the changes.
So the second page is revised with the changes?
Correct.
Oh, okay, so,
And I'm just looking at the original one that highlights
All right,
what the
I'm just-
changes were so that I
much
can,
easier for some of us older people to read, so if it's the same thing, then
So Linda,
I'll
I'm
read that.
assuming if we pass these changes, that you'd be updating the bottom of the page from the 2015 date.
Yes, we'll update that.
right.
So that's what threw me off, was it had the older 2015 date on there. Thank you.
So continuing on with that number one, another update was if the timing between 2 consecutive meetings doesn't allow for new requested information to be sent to us by mail, the designated representative, whether it be school board, selectmen, or district rep, would provide the information 24 hours prior to the meeting to Linda, AKA the land use specialist. Then she'll email that information to all of us. You know, if we've got a meeting on Saturday and we're meeting again on, Tuesday or whatever, obviously it isn't going to get mailed to us in time.
Will that require a vote or not? As far as,
If the timing between the meetings is such that the mail cannot reach us in time so that we have 7 days to look at it, that would be sent to us, because usually that's answers to questions we might have asked or additional information we might have requested, as opposed to the packets. Let's see, what else was there? All requests for additional information are to go through the land use specialist, no longer the chair. So if any of you have any requests for additional information, you want 2 years worth of attendance records or whatever, don't call me, call Linda, or email her or what have you. She will be the one who will be contacting the appropriate party to get that information for us. Are there any questions or concerns on those changes? Okay. Moving on to number 2. A, B, and C are exactly as they were. D is now, if a member cannot attend a meeting, contact the land use specialist via email or phone prior to the meeting, and then she will let the chair know. The difference there is you're not contacting me, you're contacting the land use specialist. E was added in, if a vote of the Budget Committee approves attendance through electronic means of communication under RSA 91-A:2, Section 3, any member wishing to participate by electronic means must contact the land use specialist by email or phone no later than 72 hours prior to the meeting. The consensus was that, calling up right before a meeting saying you're not going to be physically here is one thing, but it does take some time to be able to get the electronic stuff set up, as we saw earlier this evening. And the subcommittee felt that the 72 hours would be appropriate. If absent from a meeting, contact the land use specialist for information and pick up any distributed material at Town Hall prior to the next meeting. We are not going over prior meetings in detail at the next one. So, as an example, our next meeting is probably December 4th, our Saturday meeting, when we review the town's proposed. If anything is handed out that day and you're unable to be here that day, then you need to contact land use specialists and make arrangements to pick up whatever might have been handed out that day. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Conduct at the meetings was pretty much the same, but I think we just clarified a couple of things. I'm looking at my old one. Members shall abstain from voting when a conflict of interest exists. When a member abstains due to a conflict of interest, the member is to remove himself or herself from the table. The next one, a motion to reconsider can be made by any eligible member of the committee who voted on the prevailing side. The second to the motion for reconsideration can be made by any member of the committee. If after voting, the motion to reconsider prevails by 2/3 of a majority of those present, reconsideration takes place. If not passed by 2/3 majority, the issue is dead, because you can only ask to reconsider a particular item once. So you can't go back and try another time. And members of the public shall not speak at a work session unless allowed by the committee and recognized by the chair. Again, that's pretty much the same. The order of the meetings, everything remained the same with the exception of, under A, all meetings will adjourn or recess at 10 p.m. for weeknight meetings, hopefully before, or 4 p.m. for weekend meetings unless 2/3 of the members present vote to continue with a set time and or a number of items to be discussed or voted on. Sometimes we've left at 3, sometimes we've continued until 5. It just depended on how the day went and how close we were to finishing, and is it worth staying an extra hour to not have to come back on a night. But the 3 o'clock, we felt we were just getting back from lunch and we might be here for an hour and a half by the time everybody gets in, and we weren't really getting a whole lot accomplished. So we suggested changing it from 3 to 4. The only other change was number 6, under the order of meetings. Upon receipt of a resignation from a member at large with signature to the land use specialist, the chair or his or her designee may request the land use specialist to advertise for the open position. God bless. And finally, and we felt that this was very important, the land use specialist may designate responsibilities within these procedures to the land use administrative assistant as needed. There may be occasions when Linda can't get it all done. Susan or whomever is in that position could. Are there any questions, comments, concerns about the recommendations that the subcommittee made to our procedures? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
However, I do have a question.
Okay.
Something that's bothered me, as you're going to know, and I don't know if many others here will, for years, is that the way that the budget committee goes through the budgeting process, approves the budget, and then has a public hearing. To me, it is ass backwards as it could possibly be. So let's just say that the school decides that they want to build some great big tower of whatever, and there's a big issue that year, and they want to come in and speak to the issue, but the budget is already approved. That just simply does not make sense. This budget committee should not approve the budget until they have had input from the taxpayers in a public hearing. I know you have a public hearing, but it's after you've approved the budget. And yes, I understand you can go back to the motion to reconsider on D3D. If someone on the prevailing side, the winning side, only wants to revisit the budget, which will never happen, never has, never will.
It has. Oh, yes, it has.
So
Yep.
it's just
Bob
backwards.
Holden did one year in
So I would like to make a motion, I don't know when it's appropriate, that we change that policy, that we in fact have a public hearing where citizens of this town can come in and speak their piece about either budget prior to the budget committee approving the budget. In other words, I think the budget committee should get input from the town, it's their money, prior to approving the budget. So whether now is the time or whatever, I'm sorry I couldn't be at these meetings or the meeting. Canoeing was more important to me at the time.
Yeah, I get that. I agree. I've been around a long time, and we did used to have a public hearing prior to the budget committee taking their final vote. In many years ago, we did. I don't recall when it changed. What I will say is that I would like to have the opportunity to research to determine whether or not there was a change in RSA that requires it to be the way it is now versus just our decision. If you're following.
I can answer that
Oh,
question.
please, Linda, enlighten us.
For many, can you hear me on this or not?
Yeah.
For many years, as far back as I can recall, the Budget Committee did hold 2 public hearings. One prior to starting your work session, and then a final public hearing. There was, in the original one was, they took the department head, Board of Selectmen recommended budget, and could come in and look at those that were available to view and make comments prior to the budget committee going through and making their recommendations. At some point, someone said, why does the town of Northwood hold 2 public hearings when only one is required?
That's it.
And you are required to have one after you have recommended your budget and created yours. So the thought was, well, okay, so we moved to that, and there has been a fair amount of concern that both by budget committee members and members of the public that there isn't the opportunity for the public to be able to voice their opinions before you do your work. And recently, this also came to light with the work of the planning board on trying to move forward with a more detailed process for the capital improvements plan, and held a public hearing, which really was to some degree outside the realm of the planning board's responsibility on the CIP, but they suggested that that happen so that there could be a public record prior to the start of the budget committee for both the selectmen and the budget committee. So it's certainly reasonable to either go back to where we were with having a public hearing prior to the work sessions, or possibly even having a public hearing for both the CIP and the operating budget prior to the beginning of the budget work sessions. But that's something for the budget committee to determine. It does, I mean, you can add it to your procedures, or you don't need to. You can just simply add it to your calendar.
As I recall, thinking back, because you refreshed my memory more, we ended up spending the entire Saturday. Usually the department heads would come in the morning, as they typically do now, and give us the information, and the public was here listening. And then after lunch, we had or was it all
The public hearings
inclusive?
were prior to any opening of discussion work session. It was public hearing, work session, public hearing, work session, towns, school and town.
So the public hearing then was strictly based upon the public's questions, based on the same information that we have been presented, that they have reviewed in advance?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. Pam?
I was just going to try to bring us back to the amendments to the procedures and say that of what you just said, I would be on the side of more research into this, because everything that you just said would want to know more.
Oh, no,
So that is
it's,
not-
we are only required to hold one hearing,
Right, so
and that is true.
That issue is not the one that we're addressing as far as these particular amendments. And my second question was, is this just your read-through to vote at next meeting?
No,
Or-
to vote this
Because
evening.
it looked like at the bottom there, a majority voted, so amending, these rules may only be amended by majority vote of the members of the committee, provided that such amendment is read at one meeting immediately preceding the meeting at which the vote is taken.
Okay, then I
That means we
stand
cannot
corrected. We won't be voting on them
cannot
this
vote on
evening.
this tonight, and I'm just thinking of Cortez that has to meet at night.
Right. So we will, are there any other questions regarding these that that Tom or I could address this evening? Okay.
I guess
Oh,
my only-
Bob.
My only question would be in terms of allowing access to somebody to come in by Zoom, a voting member, because otherwise they can see it on the thing. And it's 72 hours. I'm just wondering, because basically that's looking at, what happens on a weekend type of thing.
Email, and emails are dated. Linda was with the three of us while we were discussing this, and phone messages that are left are also time-stamped. So if you know you're not going to be at a Thursday meeting, then you need to be notifying before 5 o'clock on Monday in order to comply with the 72 hours. Now, somebody could have fallen on Wednesday and broke a leg and whatever, and obviously that's a different kind of situation and whatever, but as a general rule, if you know you're going to be out of town, if you know that you're just not going to physically be able to come, most times you would know 72 hours prior to the meeting.
I'm thinking back to, because we had used this prior to COVID for selectmen. In other words, situations when Scott Breyer was out of town, he could call in,
Right,
and that would be accepted under the RSA.
as long as there's a quorum, right?
And so oftentimes, some of these things happen without 72 hours notice. So do we have a provision to allow somebody to be a voting member of this committee who is not able to qualify 72 hours beforehand, that they need to come in either by phone or by Zoom?
If I could just
Yes,
suggest,
please,
if
Linda.
somebody has a one-time emergency, if they're out of town on short notice, they can call in and be excused absent.
Absolutely, but they cannot vote.
Right, but the concern is that staff has to have some time to be able to plan for it and set up a Zoom meeting.
I understood that, but I thought that at least the last several meetings that I've noticed, the Zoom numbers have pretty much been the same one. So I'm just...
But they still have to be set up individually for a specific time and date.
I just say it before Susan comments, and she's been fabulous in setting these up. If for any reason she can't do it, somebody else has to, I might have to find somebody else to set it up. On vacation or whatever.
But I mean, we still have the phone option. I'm just, voting is important. We're a small group. And we can all abstain and not show up to a meeting and be excused and follow it by watching, either by getting the minutes later or by watching. But the ability of the standing members of this committee to have a vote and aren't able to be here, I'm just, again, I'm just concerned, and I don't know, maybe nobody feels the same way, but I think 72 hours is a relatively long period of time for somebody to know ahead of time that they won't be here.
The other concern, Bob, was, let's say we make it 24 hours. So all of a sudden at 10 o'clock last night, 6 people decide that they want to do Zoom because for whatever reason. Maybe, it could be a variety of reasons. Blizzard, illness, they can't get their car out of the, blizzard. And we wouldn't know if we'd have a quorum. So having some lead time would then allow, if 6 people said they couldn't come and we knew the numbers weren't going to meet the threshold for a quorum in the room in order to do that, then we'd have some time to contact people or contact the chair to cancel the meeting and reschedule it. There has to be some time allowed.
So what you're saying is the 72 hours is to provide the ability to be sure we have a quorum as opposed to having the...
Yes,
Well,
that is
yeah,
right.
that's definitely one of the priorities.
The technical means to do that.
It was a combination of both.
Yeah.
Pam?
I was just going to address 72 hours is necessary for some committees that meet on Mondays. So over the weekend, we could not expect the town to set up. So for those Monday meetings that are legal, with a lot of people coming in for that, you really need that 72 hours to set that up, especially, if it's going to be a Monday meeting and you're making a legal decision.
Okay, but this isn't blanket for all meetings, it's just for the budget committee.
Yeah.
Right, but we'll get to it in a few minutes when we review our proposed calendar for December. There are 2 Monday meetings that are proposed, so.
I was just tossing it out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So are there other concerns or questions regarding the recommended updated procedures? Okay, so those will be on our agenda in December to be voted upon. which our next meeting will be the December one. Okay, and the December work session calendar that Linda has put together as suggestions. We're looking at, as is typical, the first two Saturdays in December, the first Saturday for the town, and then the following Monday and Wednesday nights to continue, because we've not completed the town in a Saturday in several years. And if we finish on, say, Monday the 6th, then we don't need Wednesday the 8th, then we won't have a meeting on Wednesday the 8th. The following Saturday is labeled school, but that's also the 3 districts. Because typically we've been able to complete the school with enough time so that we can review and vote on the 3 districts for that day. So those 3 representatives need to be sure that their materials are mailed to us in a sufficient amount of time so that we have them 7 days prior to the 11th. And I'll let you guys work out what day you feel you need to mail them. Pam?
On the 4th, do you have a time on that? Is it everything's calendar?
What, 4th?
December 4th?
December 3rd.
No, it's the 4th.
2 3s.
It's a typo.
You got the wrong date?
Yeah, you got third twice.
Oh, I see. Got it. I did not pick up on that. Generally, the Saturdays begin at 9. We have tried to stop around 3. One of those recommendations in the new procedures was to go until 4 on Saturday. So it would be 9 to 4. We generally have an hour for lunch in the middle.
If we vote on those amendments, can we go till 4 that day?
Yeah, we should be able to,
Procedurally, sure.
or we can always vote as we have in the past. It's just to try and standardize it a little bit more. So that particular Saturday, we
9 to 4 possible.
voted on it. I would suggest planning on 9 to 4.
And on Monday evenings or
7 p.m.,
7 to
no later than 10.
no later than 10.
Ideally, not that late. Yes, ma'am. Correct. So, no, left off of the 11th. The ones left off on the 11th. Yeah. We can't do the districts and the town in one day. We can do the school and the districts in one day. The 13th is listed for town if we haven't finished. School if we didn't finish on the 11th. The districts in case we got bogged down with the school and we didn't get to all of the districts. And if everybody who's providing us with materials for consideration has all their backup and we can get through it all, we might not even need that day, unless it's a snow day. But we do need to list a couple of snow days because we've used them in the past. Are there any comments, concerns, questions? Brad?
Just a question on the village districts.
Yeah?
Typically, we didn't put these in the mail, I don't think. I think we just showed up with them
You
on the
just
day
showed
of.
up with them.
Now, if we're going to put them in the mail, I'm just wondering if if Linda would have a date that she needs to have them in-house by, so that you're doing all the mailings at one time, that you're not getting piecemeal, is all I'm thinking. So you'd be doing the school at some point.
Well, the school will be mailing theirs out.
Do your own. We provide a list of addresses.
Linda doesn't mail out the school does.
So we have to mail our own to all the members?
That's typically,
Can we get a mailing address list?
Yes, that's right. We're gonna have
Can the district,
yes, Bob.
possible for the districts to provide their budget at the town, and then that would be 7 days prior to the meeting on the 12th?
Well, we tossed that around, and one of the ideas was, well, if we're asking for everything to be mailed as opposed to being picked up, because, I mean, for years we did that. The school used to bring their binders in on the first Saturday, and then we'd look at them the following week. Tom, Linda, you're...
Well, the problem becomes if people are absent, or if there's a storm, and the meeting has to be moved forward, then they're not received within that 7-day period. And if we make an exception to the district, I mean, I realize there's a big difference between the village district budget to the school budget. But
There's a big difference.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Million.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the idea was to get everything in the mail so that everybody receives it, especially in light of the fact that there may be people who want to take advantage of the remote, whether, for those who may not be able to attend except remotely, that they receive theirs at the same time everybody else does. And basically, so we don't have to chase packets for people that may not be here.
We're looking at $2, 20 members or so, plus other things, for districts that have almost no money.
No, it would stop and think for a minute. 5 sheets can go into an envelope with just the 52 for whatever.
And
You guys,
Can the three districts send theirs out as a single packet?
what do you mean as a single packet?
In other words...
Well, that's what I was getting at earlier, that if we all had them,
You send yours out in one packet, you send yours out in one packet.
Why don't
you
we send
yours.
all 3 of them out in one packet?
Well, if the 3 of you want to get together and do that, you certainly
we don't have the
can.
money in the budget to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, Brian.
I also just, these rules haven't been approved yet.
Yeah.
So if their next meeting is a Saturday meeting, and they don't have any money in the budget, they could put money in the budget for next year, understanding that that's, I mean, just technically.
Is your middle name Solomon?
Saying, you know.
That makes sense.
So the school budget's going to be, that 3-ring binder's going to be sent in the
No,
mail?
not binders this year. Not binders. If anyone wants to have their materials in a binder, you're free to do so, and probably we all have at least one of those school binders still at
I
home.
was thinking.
That makes sense. Yes, Tim?
I'm wondering if we're doing anything about the fact that a number of members tonight did not get one or both packets, so are we going to do something to...
I'm not sure what the
Well,
hang-up
it
was
seems
with
like
that.
somebody should look into that. I mean, quite a few people did not get packets, and there's going to be a lot of packets going out.
Mike Jobin did not receive either packet.
Mine is taken care of because I'm now on Brian's list.
If I get your address, I'll just send it over.
You can get school.
If there's anybody else?
Did anybody else not get both packets?
I just think we need to look at the mailing list and make sure it's complete.
I think we need to
There's some kind of a problem.
help with the postage over here. get back to that. because
Well-
you're-
So let's
you're
take up a
right,
collection.
that's a huge expenditure.
Okay,
It's, I
so,
was only half kidding, because it's not a huge expenditure, but I'm just making a point, you're making a
Since you
rule
two-
change. You're making a rule
Whoa,
change this
whoa,
year that
whoa.
affects this year's budget.
one at a time. Eric?
I forget exactly where it was, but wasn't there something in here where if someone wasn't present, it was their responsibility to go and get it? Would that suffice for the 7-day lead time?
No.
If they weren't present, it was their, like, if they weren't present, do they still need the 7 days, or can they come and get it on Monday? Which would alleviate us being able to just drop it off on
If,
Saturday.
that's if, for materials that are handed out during a meeting that someone isn't at.
I just
A
think
couple of times there were some revisions to budgets or articles or what have you that were handed out at that meeting. If someone isn't here at the meeting, they would need to come in, make arrangements with Linda to pick up those revisions, but not for picking up your packets. But Tom, Linda, that sort of, Brian's point sort of makes sense to me in that we have not voted on these yet. If the 3 districts were to bring in their packets, as the school used to do on Saturday, this one time, assuming that these will be voted on and approved that day, we would have them. That would give them the opportunity, while they're planning their budgets, to add a line for postage
for next year.
for next year.
It just,
Does that make sense?
I'm telling you, it's more organized. It's more organized for the, I don't know how many pages. Ours is 1 page, 2 pages.
Well, that's what I
And,
was
you know,
thinking.
for the small amount of paper we have, it's easier to put it in all at one time on one day on somebody's desk here and make sure they walk out of here with it. People that aren't here, we can accommodate that. We can mail them or something to them. But to have all this stuff going through the mail, which is not all that reliable today, just makes no sense for the small amount of paper that we're talking about. It's not one of these.
No, totally
it's
agree. You
one
guys
lousy
usually have
page.
maybe 3 pages.
It takes us
depending on
5
what-
minutes to go through it in the budget committee. I mean,
Exactly.
And it's a formality.
I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill on this, and it's just, we need to accommodate it.
So for this year, be sure to bring your packets
We'll have them on the 4th.
on the 4th so that we can review them.
And if we're going to have to do mailings, then we would like to have an accurate mailing list of everybody. I don't think I have one now. No, they're all
sure
the
I
members,
have one now.
mailing list for the members if we're going to have to mail them eventually. You started out asking us to mailing, so give us a
Right.
mailing list.
Oh, no, that's not where I was going. Absolutely, if you need to mail them, you need to have a mailing list. Absolutely. I was thinking while I was looking at you, do I have an updated mailing list? Linda?
Yes, I have to sell it to the school every
Right, that's what I thought.
so that they
So
have
we
an
just
updated
forward it.
mailing list for theirs, so
So we
it's not a problem.
Forward it to the 3.
Just CC all the districts.
You will get an updated mailing list, but for this budget
I
season,
understand that, we'll bring them in on the 4th.
bring them in on the 4th.
However, there may be a few people that aren't here on that day, and you
Then
want us to
it's
mail them
their
to them, right?
You could, or their responsibility to come in and pick them up. Make sense?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
No?
no.
Tim, go ahead.
I don't understand why you can't just give the districts a date 2 days before you expect to send out the town mailing and allow them to bring in their copies and go out with the town mailing. Why can't you do that?
Because we're not doing them on the day of the town meeting. We're doing
Yeah,
on the
they're-
school
They're
meeting.
a separate fiscal entity.
I understand that.
Good. That's the answer.
Any other questions, concerns about the calendar? Okay. If memory serves me, we do need to vote to accept this. Okay. I'm sorry?
Also with the understanding that work sessions and open meetings, if you get into any kind of an issue, you can always continue to a date and time certain. It's not on.
Correct.
So there is some availability if there's anything comes up with these dates.
Which we have also done in the past. So, any other questions before we take a quick vote on this? Okay. I'm guessing we don't have Betsy still?
Motion to accept the calendar.
Second.
Move the vote.
Who was the second? Mike?
Or Tom, whoever.
And we love the parliamentary law. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Somebody's got to keep me on track.
I can't help it.
Right.
I have Roberts on my phone.
I don't think we have Betsy at this point.
Betsy, are you still with us?
Tom?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Ted has left. Pam?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes. Are we good with the dates, Betsy? Betsy?
Are you good with the calendar? Betsy, are you
I
good
think we
with the
lost her a long
calendar?
time ago.
I thought she said yes.
I heard a yes.
The motion passed.
She just said yes again, so.
Are you in favor of the calendar? Thank you.
Okay, so 13-0 on the calendar. And then finally, you got the other handout tonight very briefly. These were the items that we have generally requested of the school and the town for backup, for information for our quarterly as well as our December meetings. At this point, in the interest of time, I'd like to concentrate on, for the town and the school, for the meetings in December. The quarterlies we can address at a different time. And they're generally the same thing every quarter, so. We've all agreed that in the interest of being able to read print that's large enough for those of us that are having issues with our site. 11 by 17 paper, single-sided. Obviously, when it goes on that size paper, we can read the numbers. The columns that are proposed for the school is an example of the columns that we've always had. Narrative that goes along with the budget spreadsheet and any backup. Vitally important that the reps provide backup information. Warrant articles for the next year with the votes and supporting documentation. Financial expenditure report as of November 15th, so that we have the most up-to-date information on what's been spent thus far. Employee costs and benefits, the staff listing, health and dental insurance rates, which are generally received by then. List of special ed out-of-district placements. Current enrollment reports as of November 15th. Obviously, the SAU budget, since it's something new. Is there anything that anyone can think of in addition to these, which is what we generally receive, that they would like to have from the school? Okay, I guess there's your guide.
Sounds good. Sarcastic and ask for how many pencils you have. Because I don't see them listed, but.
We always end up needing all that info. For the town, the columns again are the same columns that we have traditionally had. Should be on the same 11 by 17 paper, just as we received for tonight. Narrative notes that go along with the budget spreadsheet, backup for everything. Revenue sheet, the capital improvement plan for the next year with supporting documents as well as the warrant articles. They include the selectmen's votes as well as the supporting documentation. Trustee report with the current balances, the financial statement again as of November 15th, revenue report as of November 15th, the employee listing with 2021 salaries and proposed 2022, employee benefits and costs for all positions by department when possible, and the health and dental rates. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, additions? I do have a few additions based upon what the CIP plan was showing for requests for 2022 for the town, with the understanding that all of those requests may not actually make it to warrant articles. But if a warrant article involves highway equipment, there was a request for another dump truck. I would like to see a list of all of the highway equipment, including vehicles, because I honestly don't know why we need as many vehicles as we have when we only have a couple of employees that I am aware of. I would like to see a full list. Same with any fire rescue vehicles. Because again, we vote on them and it takes a year and a half or 2 years to get them in. So I don't know what we have currently and whatever, but there were requests for additional equipment. If they make it through the selectmen onto the warrant, then I feel that we need that information to make our determinations.
I would think it'd be reasonable if the town would have a listing of, an inventory listing of current on-hand assets, such as vehicles and all. So I don't think you're out in left field asking that, if there was going to be a warrant article requesting. But nobody is here to really answer whether or not they have an ongoing list of inventory.
Oh, they have to have one.
So
right.
That shouldn't be something that would be hard for them to print off and supply. Vehicles and equipment?
Yep, for fire rescue and highway.
And police.
And police. Thank you.
And animal control.
And then the only other thing,
All town
Yeah.
vehicles.
the only other thing that I felt would be extremely important would be a list of the current balances remaining in all of the capital reserve funds from the town treasurer. We've already requested a trustee report, which is for the expendable trusts. Because there have been concerns expressed regarding, is there enough money and what fund is the department head looking to take this expenditure from? And I'm not at all certain that there's money there. I think the budget committee should be aware of how much money is in funds that any board is requesting money come from. Because if there isn't enough in the fund and the voters pass it, then it's going to come out of the operating budget. Because there's no other place for it to come. I kind of like to know in advance how much money's in the bank before they spend it. Those were my additional requests.
Those two, the town-owned vehicle list, which would satisfy all those categories, and a statement of the capital reserve fund balances.
Correct.
Which I think has accompanied warrant articles when they say we're going to put so much more money into the fund, and here's how much is already there. And I agree with you.
Right.
It's always good to know how much you have in the bank, so to speak.
It is a certain transparency.
Well, and we have had a few purchases where the first payment would be made upon delivery, and delivery was much later than what was anticipated, and I'm just...
You need a motion to include those, since this list was
basically
never a motion?
Basically, when Linda and I discussed this, it was just to put forward, to have a template of things that we routinely request, so that whomever is chair, or if Linda unforgivably decides to resign. Right, exactly. These are traditional things that we look for.
I'm just curious if you feel the need for us to simply nod our heads and say that those seem like good ideas. To go along with what you've already come up with.
Okay. Does anyone have a problem with any of them? Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add at this point? Okay. Seeing none. I believe there was one other little housekeeping thing in view of the fact that we still have COVID, in view of the fact that in December, we're going to have a lot of additional people meeting with us, between department heads and what have you, giving explanations as to what they're asking for in their budgets, the potential to have public here and whatever. I thought it might be a good idea if we asked the school if we might be able to utilize the gym for our 2 Saturday meetings, so that there would be sufficient space to spread out. There would be enough room for the public. We still have high numbers.
I assume the school will be happy to offer the gym. But I can check.
I think maybe just to be on the safe side, if...
Yeah, I mean, typically there's a facilities request form and it goes through. There is issues this year where the gym is being used as a cafeteria along with the cafeteria, but I think for these 2 meetings that could be accommodated. It's just, I can double check for you, but I'm pretty sure the school would be happy to accommodate.
Does that make sense to everybody else?
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah,
to
I'd like to see spread out more.
We could spread out more, and we're missing 4 people tonight, 3 people tonight. 4, because Dan isn't here either. Where would we put them? You know, we need another table if that was the case, and then there still isn't room. If you could check for us, Brian, that would be terrific. Tom?
Acoustically, the gym is awful. So I'm wondering if the old cafeteria might, which is a somewhat smaller space, has a slightly lower ceiling, might work
where we used to have school district meetings years and years ago.
Years ago.
I mean, it might be a little, and my personal experiences are both awful acoustically, so, but whatever you prefer.
Maybe if I get a
About
chance to
that
visit.
utility room at the go-round. That's much better acoustically.
It is, but I
Are
believe
you saying the multi-purpose room?
we have to pay for that, I believe. I don't know that for certain, but
I doubt
if we're meeting with the on the school's budget and whatever, it just, and that's where we end up having our meetings now for deliberative for both town and school.
And I agree with you, Ginger, but as you know, every year you get complaints about the acoustics. People can't hear.
I'd rather pay the money and go to Brown than be in a meeting that's as echoey and garbled and hard to understand as I anticipate in a gymnasium setting.
Well, then there's also the issue of, and I suppose it's something that could be asked about as far as who's going to do the recording, who's going to do the live stream, if it's up at Co-Brown.
And do we have it in our budget to pay, because we cannot go over our own budget?
Well,
Well,
you can, but there are repercussions if you do.
because we would undermine everything we sit here for if you overspent your own budget.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at this point, we have spent very little out of
We're not
our
looking.
budget. Okay, my suggestion is this, taking into consideration all the comments and concerns and whatever, would the committee like Linda and I to investigate the possibilities of utilizing Co-Brown and what that entails? While Mr. Winslow has graciously offered to check and see if that is an option. It sounds as though if you had to pick one over the other, most, if not everybody, would prefer Co-Brown as a location.
My concern is if the situation is just a question of audio, that is a relatively easy situation to solve. The band, audio is a problem in certain buildings in
Yep.
town. And I would say that rather than going through the expenditure, and one of the things that the town as a whole was attempting to do was to wean ourselves
Right.
from relying on the academy.
Right.
Which we have done for a long, long, long period of time. And we finally have a town facility where this can be done. And the school has opened its arms to us for voting and everything else.
Right.
If it's possible, I guess I would prefer going to the school, provided we don't disrupt their lunch thing. Our Monday meeting,
No. Our night meetings would still be here
the 2 Saturday meetings, I think that would be good.
because of the additional people that,
A little thought going into how you set up the audio would go a long way to get rid of the problems with the echo. Because you're not, if you don't use that overhead thing that they use for broadcasting games, you're going to be better off.
right.
So you should either straw poll us, because I don't think it's all one way or the other, or just simply go with what we have within our budget, which would be the school.
Do you think you could consult to this sound system arrangement?
It'll cost you.
Money's no object.
Let's check and see what's in the budget. Okay, so Brian, if you can check with the powers that be at the school
And notify us where to go.
at the earliest opportunity and, notify Linda. Yep. And then we'll let everybody know what's going on, or where it's going to be. No, we had not gotten back to that yet.
More information.
In view of the time I think it's definitely a subject that needs to be discussed. But I also think we got to look at dates. What I've done in the past is worked backwards from the date that, because we're SB2, that when deliberatives have to be, and we're going on the presumption that we're not going to be delaying deliberatives this year, how many days prior to that must you have your public hearing, and then work backwards from there to see what the time frame is where it could be fit in for all of us to take that into consideration. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking January, not December, but you've got Thanksgiving.
And it's something that we did not have when we did have those hearings, was we didn't have the deliberative session.
Correct.
Essentially, is the second public hearing.
Right.
on what we have done as a budget.
Exactly.
Many communities will go through the budget, but not vote until everything has been gone over page by page.
Right.
And then possibly at that point, have a public hearing. The public would have had time to hear or to listen to the live stream or be present, and then allow an hour for a public hearing before the budget committee goes back and votes. It's a better process to
Yeah.
do it that way than looking at it the way it's been done the last few years. It seems it's been, we look at a section, vote on it. Look
Right.
at a section, vote on it.
Right.
And then you get to the end.
And it's like, oh
and
my
you
God.
haven't looked at the whole budget. You've looked at it section by section.
Yeah.
So the idea might be to have a public hearing prior to the budget committee going back and deliberating over the
Specific
budget and
sections.
voting on it. That would give people time to think about what they presented without having to, let's say, the police chief or the highway foreman comes in and presents something, and then you vote on that part. And then, I don't know how others feel, but I know I was on the budget committee years ago, and when you have information that's just being presented right at that moment in time, a week later you might be thinking about it, going, oh, I'm not sure, I would have asked more questions, or I would have voted. So, it may be that a change in format of how you process your information might be another option, and then hold a public hearing, vote, and then hold the final public hearing as to what you are actually recommending.
So in other words, sometime between our Saturdays and our night meetings, have a place and time for the public to come, because they can be there on the two Saturdays to hear the presentations as we're hearing them. I recall fondly having the two hearings.
The public
But-
hearing, that is the one that, the only thing is you would have to have a date for it. Like,
Right.
let's say you want to do it that first Monday for the town.
Meaning the 6th?
Right.
Now you're looking at a public, which conceivably could be more than Jim Vanderpool.
Right.
Well, I do recall, it wasn't that many years ago, there was probably 4 or 5 people in the audience who expressed serious, serious concerns that they did not have the opportunity
Yep,
to voice their concerns and opinions to the budget committee before they voted.
right.
And they thought the idea of coming in at the tail end after all the work's done and expecting the budget committee, after they're ready to just close the books and go home, to reopen it all, isn't really very productive.
And I too recall that. So if we, Tim, go ahead, hon.
So I also would like to look back at the RSAs. As you know, I brought this up a number of years ago. Nothing was done, so I thought it would be good to bring it this year again. It's bothered me for a long time. But things are coming back to me as we're all sitting talking and I'm listening to you. I don't really think we need to reinvent the wheel. There are many towns, Nottingham for instance, that absolutely, without question, has a meeting for the public before the budget committee votes on the budget. That's all I'm looking for. And I know it can be done. There's just no question it can be done. And as soon as I get home tonight, I'm going to go look at the RSAs, because I've kind of ignored it for a number of years now. But I'm not going to continue to ignore it because I think it's wrong. I think the public should have the ability to have a say prior to the budget committee voting on the budget.
So with that in mind, what about, we have our regular Saturday, the 4th, that Monday night, the 6th, maybe we have to use that night for the public to say what they want to say, and we come on the 8th and do our final work.
I think he's suggesting a night prior to the 4th, an evening.
But none of us have gotten the information prior to the 4th. We haven't gotten any input from the department heads explaining what's in there, why they're proposing what they're proposing. We hadn't gotten any input from department heads regarding any warrant articles. The public isn't necessarily going to have all of that backup information. They may, if that's what's going to be made available for them.
It seems, well, there is a statute that does state that the public, that the town must provide copies of the proposed budget to any citizen that requests it.
Correct. But it doesn't say when that needs to be made available to them. We're supposed to have everything that we're voting on at deliberative, the town report for deliberative, when we aren't able to have that for a variety of reasons.
In the sense that we don't necessarily have, in other words, we have to have a public hearing, which basically blesses the budget that we have blessed.
Which is we have at the end.
Let's just say that we open up the last part of the meeting on both Saturdays to comments from the public.
We could do that.
Because that would solve the problem that Tim is concerned about, of having no input, but it doesn't have to be an officially posted. It's just that we are now allowing the public to enter comment on the budget.
Public comment time.
Public comment time.
That could work, and we would be ideally at the school, so there would be plenty of room for people to come and listen and what have you. That makes a lot of sense. What do you think?
It's a start. I don't know. I so wish I had the RSA in front of me.
Well,
I just feel very strongly that you can have, the budget committee can come to, on paper, a decision on what they feel the budget should be, and then have a public hearing, and then consider any changes that the public might have come up with, or not, and vote. I'm convinced there's a way. I don't have the RSAs in front of me.
Well,
I-
that's-
you know.
And again, is it necessary to call it a public hearing?
What?
Is it necessary to have a public hearing, or can we have comment from?
Public comment.
Well, so my answer to you, to me, a public hearing posted. We're going to have a public hearing on the school and the town budget. This is your chance to have a say. If there's one thing I would like to see happen in this town, it's to go back where we had more participation from the public. We've gotten away from that. And I think that some of us that were here some years ago can remember some pretty raucous public hearing meetings right here in this room.
Pre-SB2.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I'm not talking about deliberate. I'm just saying public hearings on the budget.
That's prior to SB2.
No, I think a lot of people would like to have a say. They just
Oh,
don't
I'm
feel
sure
they
they
have
would.
it.
I don't disagree with that, Tim. I'm sure they would.
Yeah.
The question is how to provide that
I understand.
with the
So,
time frame that we have to work with.
and the time frame is difficult because I really feel that we need to look at the RSA. But even what Bob Young has suggested is certainly a step in the right direction.
Isn't your subcommittee?
The date of the official public hearing is set under SB2, that it has to be a certain number of days after that deliberative session. It's a very narrow window. That's why we
Yes,
always have
yeah.
it on those.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
Don't get nervous
Yeah.
if we ever have a snow day, it's going
Right.
to have to meet on a Friday.
And that's the public hearing that we have where
It's required.
it's required and we report out to the public who choose to be here what the budget committee is recommending, and at each section, at least as long as I've been chair, I've always asked the public, do you have any questions on this section? Or on this section, or this section? Looking at the minutes from the last public hearing, no comment, no comment, no comment, because the only people who were here, I think, were the Valancourts, and they didn't really ask anything.
There's been certainly a wane in the amount of participation the citizens in this town partake in. And I think that we should do anything we possibly can to get that back. And so, again, why at the normal public hearing, which is normally after the budget committee has voted on the budget, why we couldn't have a public, not vote on the budget, have a public hearing on that same day, and then a meeting afterwards?
Then we'd have to have another public hearing. We can't have a final public hearing if we have not voted on the budget.
Okay.
That was my reason for suggesting having an open comment, allowing people from the audience, the citizens, to make comment on the budget before we take a vote on it.
And I do understand what you're saying. My concern is so the window is from 9 to 4. Get done, are people going to sit here all that time? I don't know.
Well, at least if they want to have input, and it might answer some of the questions that they might have, or they might gather some information sitting there from 9 until whatever time, and it might develop some questions.
Or they just might want to show up at 3 o'clock and shoot their mouths off. Fine with me.
Like you and I?
Okay, hold it. Brad first, then Betty.
I just want to point out, this seems like this is a really good idea, but it's also a complicated idea. And you're trying to shoehorn something in for this year. We don't have any meetings scheduled, so if we're going to do it this year, it seems like we ought to have a time to go back, do all the research that needs to be done, and come back and have another meeting between now and, if you want to do it this year, well before December. How you're going to disseminate all that information to the public, that we've changed our rules.
Or our procedures, or
We've got a whole
whatever.
bunch of things here to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm frankly, personally not willing to sit here for another hour and a half discussing it.
Agreed. I hoped that we'd be done by 9, and we're already looking at 20 minutes to 10. Betty?
With what you said, my question is, sounds awfully complicated to be trying to get done for this year. Which means, why are we beating a dead horse if it's not going to have anything?
Essentially,
I think we have another meeting to discuss it.
there's a lot of us
Thoroughly.
that don't have the information we need to make a
Right.
vote, so thus you might not have the vote you need. So for tonight, we need more information. And we're not going to have that tonight. Tim's going to go look at RSAs, and Linda's got input. Linda, can I recognize you?
What information is lacking?
A bunch of stuff I'd like to know regarding the SB2 date, regarding the requirement, how many days before the window, all of that, and whether you
Well,
have to have
until,
one meeting.
okay, until
So
the
I'm not
municipal,
taking someone's word for it at this point. Would be, I want to look at the actual data, just as Tim has said he wants to go do, is that, wait, let's look at this, let's see what is required, and then come back and maybe look at the option of the public forum or the public comment section within the meeting. I do think the public should have a comment, I agree, before the vote. However, they shouldn't just be showing up for, 1 hour. They should, if you really want to make a comment on the budget, sit through the whole thing and listen, because you're right, many answers would be provided during the meeting. So I don't think you're going to settle it tonight.
okay, so to cut to the chase,
Cut to
do
the
we
chase.
want to set up a meeting for a night early to no later than mid-November next month? So that we have time for whatever we might decide that night to be able to get public notice out, particularly if it pertains to the 4th. So that those of us who want to gather additional information, different facts, maybe come up with some other ideas, and that's the only thing that will be discussed at that meeting. Is that something that we want to do, or do we want to put it off until the following year? Tom?
Let me ask a question that I know the answer to, and that is, the select board allows a comment time of 3 minutes at the beginning of each board meeting, and I think maybe at the end.
School does the same thing.
School does the same thing. That, you may want to extend it for more than 3 minutes, but it would seem to me if the purpose, and I very agree with you, that I would not like somebody to walk in and start talking about an issue, whether or not we need another police cruiser, after we've spent an hour discussing that, and they haven't heard any of that discussion. They walk in, I want to talk about police cruisers. So I would think, though, that if they want to speak in an informed way, that they come to the meeting, learn what's in the budget, and then have a chance as a public comment. So that at least minimally we start setting time aside at the end of our meetings to hear what the public has to say based on our deliberation, and along with that, we give up the passing the budget a section at a time, which is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
And if we do that, it takes a step towards what Tim, I think, wants to see happen, which is people come, listen, get informed, and then have an opportunity to say their piece.
And they can do that. We can set aside the last 2 hours of both Saturdays,
Right. And
for instance.
there's
And
also
people
a way
can listen, ask questions and the materials would be made available prior to that. They could look through the budget or whatever, and if they didn't want to sit there all day, it could be noticed, they could come in, 2 o'clock, whatever we happen to decide on.
Same thing would happen with the school board presentation. I'm not sure about the districts and whether their constituents would show the same interest, but that's a whole different
Are you
level.
raising your hand or after a fly?
Raising my hand.
Okay.
At the risk of going out on a limb, I'd like to make a motion that we table this
until after this year and gather the information, consider ideas, because we've got 3 different things going on right now.
No, they're all basic, they're all basically the same. It's simply a matter of how to go about it.
Sure.
It's the same
And
concept,
so
it's how to go about it.
The alternative is that you have another meeting before December 4th. So it's either put this off till next year or have another meeting prior to December
So
4th.
is that a motion?
So the motion was,
What's the motion?
the motion was to table it for next year and
I'll
do a
second
further
that.
discussion.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to, let's see, before I forget who did what here.
Do the research, table it for next year, just to see if that would fall.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion,
Question.
by all means.
Aren't these open to the public anyway?
They are.
So why
But the
we
difference between a work session typically is it's for the committee to do their work, not for the public
Okay, so that's
to be
designated separately. work
interacting with
session.
them.
Okay.
Which is why the selectmen have the public comments, which isn't interactive. It's
Correct.
just us making our comments,
Correct.
as opposed to a public hearing type thing where the public can say, well, why'd you do this, or what does that mean, and we can respond.
So what would we have to do to make a work session also public?
Just state that it is and post it that way. That's all.
You know, what's the problem?
The problem
If
is
people wanna show
when
up.
is it going to be done, and it
Oh, okay.
seems to be taking some,
If we're in the middle of discussion, November 11th is a free night on the board up there, that we just meet here for an hour on November 11th. What?
Yeah.
I don't know, I've always worked that
11th
day.
day of the 11th
That's right,
month.
11th day of the, and you guys have it all, yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of money to pay you.
That's it. The only other time is on the 17th.
Are we still debating or are we taking the motion?
No, question.
We're having
Discussion.
discussion about the motion.
Correct.
We don't vote until everybody's had their say.
They're researching an alternative meeting day.
Yes. Betty?
My sense is this town and the way it operates, you are not going to get to the response you want from rush this and get it down to this year. You may have one people, I don't think they're going to respond that quickly.
Other, yes, Michael?
The cynic in me says we'll have 3 or 4 people, but I do think I agree that we should try to get more people to participate, and so we should try to, have something for this year if we can.
I think it's, for those people in town who remember the old days when that's exactly what we did, while things were being presented and whatever, and we sitting out there in the public could ask questions. For those people that have been around and those individuals that have been very vocal the last several years about not having that ability, if the word got out that they could do that now, I think we might be surprised at how many people actually would want to get more information or express concerns or what have you.
So I got another question. Do we have to take a vote, make a formal motion to just open up a work session, or can you just do it as the chair?
Has to be published, posted.
Right, I mean, it has to be published and posted, I mean,
No, but
Yeah,
because
I
the work
suppose
session
it-
is not public, can you just make it public? Or do we have to vote on that?
It does have to be noticed.
it's got to be noticed as whether or not it's public or a work session.
Advance of the meeting.
I think,
Yes.
I think work sessions are public.
They-
It's just if they have public comment or not.
Exactly.
Oh,
They
okay.
can't interact. We could have had 20 people sitting here tonight listening to us. They just couldn't interact with us. They couldn't offer their opinions, their ideas, ask their questions. Because this is a work session.
Okay, but to change that, you can just decide to do that?
As a committee, we just said, this is not something
Because
that
there's a
the
motion
chair
on the
just
table, we're going to have
decides
to
on.
vote on. And
Exactly.
then if we want to do the other one, we'll have to make that motion, is what you're saying.
So the motion right now is to postpone all discussion and at a later date to be determined, probably next summer, to think about having a public hearing for next year. Tim?
So, it isn't, I'll rephrase that. It is by design that I brought this up. I didn't do it just out of the blue. I think this budgeting period is going to be of far more interest to the town than any we've had for some time. I think there's a substantial amount of people in this town that are going to want to have their say, whether it does any good or not, about certain issues on both the school and the town. On the town side, we've had 3 straight years of default budget, which is unhealthy. On the other hand, I could see it happening again easily. On the school side, we have the SAU issue. I think there's going to be a lot of people that would like to have a say. I think there's a big difference between during our work sessions, or even if they opened them, like the select board. So at the last select board meeting, once Bob and I were done with our presentation of the CIP to the select board, I was the only one at the meeting, and I know you've been the only one at many, many, many meetings. There's a big difference then when you have a budget ready to be approved, and then you have a public hearing where people, many of whom sit at home and watch us. They do. I'm constantly surprised at how many people watch the planning board meetings or the select board meetings or the budget committee meetings, and they actually know what's going on. Now, they don't want to come sit here all night or all day, and I don't blame them. Some of us, I thoroughly enjoy this, believe it or not. I get a kick out of it. I am very proud of myself for what I do, and I enjoy doing it. A lot of people don't have the time for that. Big difference between an actual public hearing on a budget that they know what's in there exactly, not what might be in there, but what has been approved or verbally approved, not officially yet. And I don't see why it can't happen. And I'm quite sure it can. We just have to figure out why. So I'm going to vote no.
There is a lot of that I happen to agree with. So Tim and I will write today down on our calendars that we actually agreed on something, because that's like Tom and I agreeing on something. In the past, that didn't always happen either.
Can we move the question so we can move
That's what I'm saying. So the motion was to table any further discussion about having any kind of a public hearing for this budget cycle.
Pending
And it would be, no, it's either table it or,
because there's not enough information available.
if you want to table it and deal with it next year, you would vote yes. If you don't want to table it but might consider it another short meeting in a week or two to discuss possibilities to perhaps have something this year, you would vote no. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Tom?
No.
Brad?
Yes.
Tim?
No.
Mike Moore?
No.
Betty?
Oh, dear.
I have a quarter in my pocket. You want to flip it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Ted is not here. Pam?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Brian?
No.
Bob?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm a no. Betsy, are you still there? Okay.
He's got to mute his phone because otherwise
Can't get through to us.
that's it.
Talking to a dead person.
Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the final count is 4 yes, 8 no. So the meeting is not, the concept is not tabled. Do we want to come up with a quick meeting night for an hour
I would.
to resolve this?
The caveat being that this is the only issue.
This is the only issue that will be discussed,
Yep.
whether it takes 15 minutes or an hour. Betty?
So moved.
Second?
Tom did.
Is it just me, or do those two sound alike? I think they sound alike. I have a hard time telling which one's talking.
Okay, any discussion about the motion, which is to set a meeting date to discuss this one item? Okay, seeing none. Tom?
Yes.
Brad?
Oh.
Tim?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Yeah, Ted's gone too. Pam?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
Mike Jobin?
No.
I am a yes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 yeses, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 no's. So we are going to set a meeting. What's showing up there, Bob, because you're closest?
Mondays, 8 and the 15th and the 22nd.
22nd CBA.
Okay, so Monday, the 8th and the 15th, unless something is priorly scheduled. And then the only other time is Wednesday, the 17th. Or Friday.
All right. Do we want to go with Monday the 8th?
That's right after daylight saving.
Yeah. This is just to determine how we would have a public hearing. This is just to determine the procedure.
Can we figure out a
This
way?
isn't going to be a public hearing for the
Public
public.
hearing.
This is just a quick meeting to determine how and when.
No, I understand that. I just want to make sure that if at that meeting you decide to hold a public hearing, you would have enough time to post it. But if you were
Or
to create,
December 4th.
Right.
So that's the 8th of November? Yeah. Whichever's the first one is the best.
Yep. That's a Wednesday.
That's too late, then we wouldn't have time to post it.
It's the availability of this one.
Some of that, Thursday's out.
Is it possible to do it if you use the first better?
the first is third,
How about November 1st, which is also Monday? There wasn't anything on there for the 1st, correct, Bob?
There was nothing on there for the first.
Because we have to think about being able to have our assistants here to be able to post it.
The day after Halloween.
The first would be better for me.
And it seems like the first is better for Linda and Susan, so
7 PM?
it would be a 7 PM, and come with your
Recovering from
suggestions.
Halloween.
I'm sorry?
I'm still going to be recovering from Halloween.
Oh, I'm not doing Halloween this year, so, yeah?
Do we have to approve the changes to the procedures at that meeting because we read them at this meeting?
Because if you do, yeah,
We would, that would be our next scheduled meeting.
Just maybe
you have to do that, and then you fall into the mailing time.
Yeah, we'd have to have a 2-item agenda then.
Unless you
Is
read
that
them-
gonna
unless you
change?
read them again and do it at the next meeting.
Is that going to change anybody's mind? The 2 items, nobody, exactly.
Postpone that item. Because if you vote those amendments, you put the mail thing into effect the days in advance.
I have a plan.
Solomon has a plan for that.
Okay.
All right, so we agreed Monday, the 1st of November?
Vote on that? to get it
No.
I don't think so.
No. We do need to vote to
I make a motion to
adjourn.
And I'll second.
Yes. Ginger, have we done our 2022 budget to be included in the,
Linda had to give that to them, and so she level budgeted it, is my understanding. That, the budget committee budget for the selectmen? Did you level fund it to turn it into the selectmen? Well, we've got stuff in there that has not been used for some time.
So we don't need to deal with
We
it
don't need to
tonight.
deal with that. No.
I think if she's not here, we do a voice vote, right?
That's right. Hey, guys, hang on, because we don't have anybody on electronic. We can do a voice vote on leaving. All those in favor of adjourning? Anybody opposed? Have a great night, guys.